Jungian cosmology holds a concept where chaos is the place change comes from, the inverting of reality such that something else may come forward. Pachakutik, an inevitable and sacred part of the cycle. Chaos, a hallowed agent of deep transformation and alchemy. Chaos isn't smooth or easy or regulated. It's fundamentally out of control, out of bounds. The limits and structures have burst and are bleeding out. I've had a theme for the past year of innocence dying. I suppose another way of saying that is the initiation of maturation. Being beat down over and over again to the point of whatever structural integrity you had collapsing and just bleeding out. Another word for that is expansion. Not the cute version you read about online, you know, the kind you pray for as you envision growth and the new life you're excited to create. I'm not sure that type of expansion actually exists, at least not at this point in the collective timeline. Chaos, the wild, fertile soil of change. Looking back on a journey is always interesting, remembering the anticipation and open possibility at the start, and then seeing what actually happened and where you end up. After an unbelievably challenging year, spending my winter doing this probably would have been really nice. But what actually happened was more like this. It was my second winter returning to Hokkaido, Japan as a backcountry cat ski guide. And despite the pace and intensity of the work, I had loved it last season. What I hadn't anticipated this go around was the level of depletion I'd be entering this winter with after the beatdown of 2025. I think I may have laughed out loud when I heard the theme for this season's DAC games. I had already been in Japan for a few weeks at that point and was barely hanging on. Restorative practice? Does somehow scrounging up enough time to just get adequate sleep so I don't get injured count? My nervous system was fried going into the season. In its most basic form, my job and expertise is keeping people alive and ideally uninjured in environments they have no business being in, blissfully ignorant of the hazards and logistics my moment-to-moment choices protect them from. Add to that the machines consistently breaking, powder frenzy, avalanche danger, lots of testosterone, and quite a bit of money on the line. All day. Every day. It's a lot to hold, to put it lightly. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of ruckus and truly epic fun to be had in the midst of it all. But it can be hard to access when you and two other lead guides have to keep the entire show together. Often, we were prepping and working from 7 a.m. to sometimes 8 p.m. every day. I would get up at 5:30 to have a little time to meditate and pray, and I quickly realized if I neglected my dream work, it felt like I was going to die on the inside as well. So my time before bed was spent there. The days and weeks ticked by, and I continued to watch this idea of restorative practice out of the corner of my eye. Simultaneously, my dreamer was showing me internal tectonic plate shifting, particularly around various aspects of the masculine and confidence. The lesson of learning to first find and hold a solid grounded center within this environment, and then be able to consistently speak from this place. There's no actual faking this. I've tried confidence on like a jacket before, worn it around, played, experimented, but this was something different. I was given the opportunity and dojo to try deepening into the real thing, finding, refinding, gradually holding the core steadiness and bearing of knowing one's place in the world. As the only female employee in the midst of a bunch of Navy SEALs and gritty mountain men, the cost of not learning this was basically having no voice, consistently getting the short end of the stick, and high levels of resulting anxiety eating away at what was left of my nervous system. The truth was, I couldn't afford to not learn this lesson, no matter how hard it was. While I've managed to develop skill sets and expertise in a handful of heavily male-dominated outdoor arenas, I'm a very feminine being. I like to think in a circle. I like to consider the whole and include everyone's voices. I love softness, connection, slowness. And though that's closer to my home base, this winter forced me into deep lessons with the masculine, discovering further its character, its varied, beautiful medicine, its poison, both in myself and reflected back from those around me. I had a steady ally and guide throughout this process. The potent plant teacher, tobacco. I had limited interaction with this plant for most of my life due to a fear of substance addiction, severe childhood asthma, and a lack of understanding around what it is to learn from plants. The most profound introduction to this teacher came in early 2024. While in a ceremony, I received a tobacco blessing, and with it I experienced for the first time the archetype and energy of a wise, mature grandfather. Over the following year, I lived on a small farm in upstate New York and had the opportunity to plant and care for some tobacco plants. The time put in tending them continued to deepen our relationship. This was when I first added this plant to my altar, and he was named and thanked every day. Time moved on, and I lived in Ecuador for most of 2025, and there began to carefully work with rapé, as well as learn from a few local teachers who had been in relationship with tobacco for a long time. Shortly after returning to the U.S. from Ecuador, I moved to Japan for the winter season and entered the next stage of lessons in chaos. One morning a week, early enough that I could keep my phone off without causing problems, I would take rapé and sit with it in meditation for around an hour. That hour was often the only time I could downregulate and actually reach a fully calm, quiet, connected state. In that hour, often significant insights would arrive around what was internally moving and shifting in me, and then afterwards, I would re-enter the chaos. Since I was only allowing myself this interaction once a week, in other morning meditations, I would sometimes call in the spirit of tobacco, and began to realize I could follow him into downregulation even without ingesting any of the plant. I was slowly learning the somatic pathways of pulling my energy in and down, into my core, and into a regulated rest state. I also began to realize this was the same place that truly embodied confidence blossoms from. And over the subsequent months, this beautiful ally taught me the way to get there on my own, as well as a broader understanding of abiding in one's steady core and rest. The teaching and practice of finding restoration and confidence while inside the chaos. In reflecting on this past season and beginning to make sense of it, I'm seeing further unfolding layers of beauty and humor. You know how some indigenous cultures do plant diets to really learn its medicine? I never would have thought going days without seeing another woman in very high-intensity alpha male environments would result in basically dieting the myriad forms of masculinity. Nor would I have imagined the Japanese norm of chain smoking perhaps providing the supportive container and presence of tobacco to hold the entirety of traversing this experience and learning. Sometimes, the most sacred lessons and transformations can happen in the most sacrilegious of places. God and Goddess bless the beautiful disaster and chaos of whatever it means to be human, and I have endless gratitude for the quiet, slow moments of reflection that reveal the perfection and order in all of it.
Siempre agradeciendo este privilegio de feliz, contemplar el sol, en tus ojos poder ver a Dios, en tus ojos poder ver a Dios.
Right out. Whoa!
Okay, pull it out.
Keep them okay.
Okay, go, go, go. So hammer's there.
Okay. Setting it.
Yeah, it's perfect. Looks great. Whoa, dude, it's fucking crazy.
Okay. All right.